Hello, and welcome to my cellar. Well, last episode was a whole lot more than I expected it would be. Got the most views ever. Got a whole lot of new subscribers. And none of that was really expected. I was just really trying to clear up some stuff. And yeah, I'm going to distance myself. As some wag pointed out, when they're painting the entire old school with a brush that I don't feel is appropriate, I'm going to call them out on it. We went there. I'm going to hop all over. I got more comments this time than I got on the last 5 combined. So I did a lot of careful editing of what I'm going to address and what I'm not. A lot of it's just dogpiling or concurrent agreement, whatever you want to call it. So we'll get started here. On the topic of recruiting women and girls to play D&D, that is, heroic fantasy and games with violence in them, in recent decades, women and girls have more and more been depicted as heroes and depicted fighting not only in RPGs, but also in movies, TV shows, and computer games, and in real life, i.e., in the modern militaries. I dare say that each example of women and girls in such roles has made it more acceptable and attractive to women and girls to play D&D. I wouldn't be at all surprised, and I hope so. I'll put it that way. We didn't have any of those to trumpet as, another reason ladies should play. We didn't have, we just didn't have those to back us up. And so, yeah, it was tough trying to find something that would be appealing enough to make them want to play. And we didn't do real well at the beginning because we didn't have a lot going that we could point to. Okay, hey Tim, here's something I've wondered for a while. Why do so many of the pioneers of D&D have beards? There's Gary Gygax, Frank Mincer, Larry Elmore, Ed Greenwood, and you, of course, many others. Any idea why? Well, I can't speak for Gary because he's dead. I can't speak for Frank. He's capable of speaking for himself. As for Larry and Ed, I don't know, but I can tell you why I have one. It's because I'm lazy. I hate shaving. I absolutely hate shaving. What a miserable waste of time every day to scrape off those whiskers. This way I just let it go for a couple of weeks and I trim it back and it looks neat. And I hate to shave, which is why I have a fuzzy neck right now. I got out of the habit of shaving again when I had my shoulder surgery last September, because that's my shaving arm. But I don't know, I just don't like to shave. Period. I can't speak for everybody else. Okay, I have this rule I use to make necromancers think twice about animating any old corpse. Normally, you can raise skeletons and zombies with the animate dead spell, who are largely mindless and follow your orders automatically. But if you accidentally animate the body of a higher level fighter, 3rd or higher, you could accidentally create a wight, wraith, or even a vampire who aren't mindless drones and will probably try to kill the mage. Neat idea. I'll be honest, to a certain degree, I'm all for any house rules that have depth and color and a quality of uniqueness, which I'm not even sure if that's really a word. You're not supposed to modify the word unique. Something isn't most unique, it's simply unique. Anyway, yeah, I like rules that add flavor to your world. Just as your world works as your world does, mine works as mine does. And as long as people coming into playing your game have a general sense, if your world has something working differently than the majority, then as long as you let them know that's going on before they're in a life or death circumstance, which then makes them die, I love it. What is it with Gail's ruining things? Gail Zappa, Frank's wife, also messed things up with the Zappa family and Zappa Family Trust. Gotta watch out for them Gales. I guess. I don't know. Maybe they were Karens before they were. Maybe Gales were Karens. No, I don't know. Interesting. Okay, biggest Curmudgeon views ever. YouTube algorithms love controversial topics, but this one is a real doozy. Ernie has not done himself any favors. I really hope he can find a way to redeem himself and find a way out of this frame of mind. I second the call for... No, I don't want to do a PSA for the old schoolers in the hobby in general. I'm not a teacher anymore. I don't have the hubris to go on and say this is the way you ought to think. All I can do is call things the way I see them and let you make an informed, rational decision. Or perhaps you have your guy edit your response. Oh, I see. I should have my video guy put a thing together and repost it as an after-school special for the folks still have trouble treating people with respect. Yeah, well, that's a good idea. And it's interesting. I have a couple of comments coming up that are directly related to that idea. And apparently the video got linked from N-World and a lot of other places, for which I say thanks. Lots of people got to see my video and some of them subscribed, so great. Someday I may have enough subscribers that I can actually get an energy drink sponsor. Maybe someday. I'm cheap. And I'm going to be changing. A whole lot of my sponsorship's going to be changing in the next month. Some added, some not. I've decided that when it comes to sponsors, because nobody's ever really paid me any money to be a sponsor of this, I've plugged things as sponsors. That's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to get with some people that have a product I think is really great, and I'm going to plug them. We'll see how that goes. Okay. All right. Now we're going back to the. This goes back a few weeks to the problems with the friendly local game stores being rude and and whatever. Those were not all the same store. Each person was in a different store. The example of playing Warhammer and Magic and too busy to get up and help me out was actually the owner and his friends. But I appreciate your advice. Well, that owner and his friends thing sounds familiar. I've spoken about the supposed hobby shop that I don't even know if it's still here in Cincinnati, that existed mainly for a bunch of Warhammer guys to have a tax number so they could order Warhammer stuff at wholesale. And we're really open to the public ever. So, yeah, all you can do if you're unhappy with your local store is speak to the owner. If the owner is one of the people that's being a jerkwad, then there are ways to let those people know they're being jerkwads, which don't necessarily expose you to personal animus. But I'm sorry if the only store you got within a reasonable drive are jerks. I'm real sorry, and for you people, that's what the internet is for. If you don't have a decent store or any store within a reasonable drive, well, yeah, order it online. All right, now here's now for important D&D curiosity questions. So I started with OD&D in '77. I did not read any of the Dragon until a few years later. There were none to be found in my area. So yeah, I know I didn't have very deep saturation or penetration into the various markets. I've been going through the archives and found on page 30 of the Dragon issue number 3 a chart untied to any other article, and the author credit is Steve Klein. It shows an expanded dex chart with mods for hit-to-hit melee, missile damage defense. All right, here's the problem. And there's another one that's a dex table for thieves and that. I don't remember them. I don't have physical copies of those old magazines. What I have are on the DVD, the CD DVD collection. And right now, for whatever reason, I'm having trouble loading it into my new computer, so I can't go and look. If you're seeing these on an archive, there's a good possibility that the copy that would normally go with something like that was dropped because of copyright. There's stuff missing from various issues on that archive. There's ads that aren't in there for companies that are still a competitor, or were a competitor then. There are ads for games that were being sold then. There were. There's missing stuff because either the author got wind of what they were doing and said absolutely not, or for whatever. I'm thinking maybe that's it. I'm going to see if I can't get this thing loaded onto my computer and look at these. And it goes on that it found another one of April 76, page 9, in Strategic Review, a dex table with modifications for thieving abilities, but also has these for dex. Different names. Parts of these appeared somewhere else. So, Jesus, that was a long time ago. Chances are that yes, as the author suggests, I put them in there to stir controversy. And if you look at my Dragon Grumbles and you look various other places, we told people repeatedly that nothing in here is official unless it's written by Gary or Dave. Everything else was just fodder for thought. Unofficial. If you like it, fine. If you don't ignore it. That's all. I'm sure there were disclaimers somewhere along in there about that. So we did run disclaimers of a sort, and did I have to run stuff like this by him beforehand? Absolutely not. Never. I never had to run anything. A couple, 3 times I went in and asked, hey, what do you think about this? Or, something like that. But never, can I publish it? Never. Let's see. We'll go on here. All right. Okay. Here, this is using Ernie as an example of Ernie got bashed on a lot, and after my last thing, and I'm not even saying that wasn't justified, because you need to think before you open your mouth. God knows I've had to learn to do that over the years. I've been asked, why. I have no idea why he said that. Somebody did make the point that he was nervous and giggly, and my response to that would be, yes, sounds like he was nervous, but that means he probably wasn't prepared. Now, you can't prepare for a Q&A session, but you can prepare to get comfortable with the idea, and you can wrap your head around being careful what you say. Some of his comments got all into genocide this and bashing on Native Americans and defending Native Americans, and pointing out that Native Americans were really pretty brutal to each other long before the white men got here, and that's true. Man has always treated his fellow man shabbily, and no skin color has ever had exactly what you could call a monopoly on uncivil behavior toward their own kind. Way too many examples to go into here, and I'm not going to open another can of worms over which ones I choose and which ones I forgot. But, yeah, a lot of the comments were the fact that hopefully the Neanderthal statements by the Dungeon Hobby Shop and the Giant Land, which I didn't know, but it's a failed Kickstarter. Their big name brand product is a failed Kickstarter. It's stirred a lot of crap up, and not just in comments on my videos, but all over Facebook. And it's had some comments by some really ignorant people. I got slung through the mud a couple of times, all on supposition and hearsay, mostly led by somebody who I finally found out, later figured out, they kept saying, we. Yeah, we, little piggy, all the way home. He was a clerk in the hobby shop and a gopher at various cons, but we. And he supposedly knew, what he was. He basically libeled me. And if he had any money, I'd sue him for the libel. Lucky for him, he doesn't have anything to make it worthwhile. And I spoke to somebody a couple days ago about what they grew up with, and they grew up with Thundar and the D&D cartoons and all that. A whole different prep school for them as they were younger. And that's dandy. He-Man. My son was a huge He-Man fan, but is also equally a Scooby-Doo fan. So go figure. On the subject of drinking magic potions, can a character drink multiple potions back to back and get each potion's effect at the same time? Do magic potions expire or lose their effect or potency similar to a glow stick fading? All right, good question. Now, potions, for the most part, are simply a liquid method of delivery to enable you to do something. Get better, perform a spell, something of that. Now, we often stack spells. Okay, you drank a potion, then you got hasted, and then you got blessed. Well, to answer your question, I would allow those to stack, or whatever terminology you want, in any way that you would normally allow it if it were one of the aforementioned spells. Because, any party worth their salt, any cleric worth their salt, the first time it looks like there's going to be conflict, he blesses the party, and everybody's a +1 for a period of time. And it stands to reason that drink, it's not going to necessarily affect the drinker. Not necessarily, but wouldn't that depend on the potions involved? You can't drink a potion of fireball. If you did, your stomach would explode. You'd incinerate everybody around you for 12 or 15 feet. All right? But those that are capable of being drunk are almost anything. I don't see a reason you couldn't put a potion of reading magic that would enable, for a period of an hour or a half hour or whatever, reading a magic that you couldn't ordinarily read. I don't see a problem with that. Now, what I do see is if you take that too far, it can definitely have a deleterious effect on the player character. Burn them out. It's like drinking too many Red Bulls. Eventually you're wandering around, zombie-faced, big staring eyeballs, and kind of burned up because you've had one too many Red Bulls. And need some real sleep and some good food or whatever. Pardon me. So I would, to answer that question again, I would say I would treat them very, very much like piling on bless and, heal and all that. A potion in my world either works or it doesn't. A potion in a bottle has a wax seal or a cork plug and a wax seal, or whatever, and it's hermetically sealed as you can get in your industrial state in your culture. So that's entirely up to you. 1,000-year-old intelligence spell might have gone bad, and it might have caused your brain to swell and you have an aneurysm and you die, or it causes your brain to swell and you get stupid and you can't remember spells anymore, or it doesn't do anything, or it does what you think it would do. It's entirely up to you. How heavily do you want to get into potions in your world? What can you actually turn into a potion, and what can't you turn into a potion? That would depend upon the effects of the spell, wouldn't it? Again, your world, your call. Speaking of Neanderthals, in D&D, Neanderthals are bitter enemies of ogres, so they're not all bad, eh? As for trolls, Tramp redeemed them in his Wormy comics. As for troglodytes, in the first adventure I DM'd, I was turned off by the idea of trogs as smelly, ugly cave dwellers, and was inspired to make them into warriors who had their own system of honor, something like the Klingons or Knights of old. They still smelled bad, though. The term I used for Neanderthal was the outdated, outmoded, primitive way of thinking. But yeah, Gary made sure that in a lot of the early simple stuff, everybody had a natural enemy. Reanimating Revisited. Some great solutions and responses from... Okay. I like the idea of granularity of effect depending upon the role and the variety of results. It would be an interesting scenario to vary the levels of control over each of the risen dead in a given clutch. Perhaps rolling a 1d4 for level, following another idea put forth earlier in the comments that higher levels may be trickier to reanimate. I think anytime you get into reanimating, you ought to just do what feels right for you as a DM. If you get a group that just starts going around reanimating, well, then it's time to have something to reanimate and turn on them. And because it's reanimated and not really alive, well, how do you kill it? You can have a lot of fun with that. And Yeah, maybe some of your undead that you control, you lose control, and they come and they beat up the ones you have under control, and pretty soon you're the one that says so well. Quick turn undead question. Does a cleric need to see the undead to turn it, or does the undead only have to see the cleric? No, sure on that one. For example, if an undead is invisible or in darkness and the cleric is clearly visible with a torch in hand. I've always played that clerics have an innate ability that has been honed through their studies and their life history to sense something, makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, whatever. If, for instance, a cleric standing outside the door of a sepulcher or tomb, and he's got a pretty good idea that there's something in there animated, well then no, he doesn't have to see it. He can, all right, because in my world, you don't have a separate prayer for ogres and troll, undead's undead. They're undead. They're in the void somewhere, soulless. So no, I wouldn't say he had to. In all cases, there might be an extraordinary case of utter, pitch darkness or whatever. But then again, what is a turn spell? A turn spell is, I see it as kind of a radiance coming forth from the spellcaster or the prayer, and causing to be rebuffed, rejected, repelled. So if that were the case, and if we're an actual 360-degree radius, they wouldn't have to see him, and they might turn something that they hadn't seen that was within that radiance. Again, that's up to your interpretation. It should always be up to your interpretation on the fine nuances of a campaign like that. How does your world work? How do you want your world to work? And then someone made the comment, in 5e, the undead needs to hear or listen to the cleric, but not vice versa. Okay, that's 5e. We generally don't deal with 5e here. Not to just brush it off, but I'm going to brush it off. Again, they would need to hear the powerful words of "get thee gone, demon," or whatever. Okay, if that's the way 5e interprets it, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just not the way I play it, not the way we played it. Okay, now here's an interesting philosophical one that's a mess. Do you have any opinion on why the classic figure of death is not a feature of D&D? Set as it is in a kind of medieval period, it suddenly struck me that death is really missing from the mix. Yet I get the impression that death was a terribly common figure in medieval culture. Your history teachers, you might have a better grasp on it than I. It was, and let's not forget that we look at the medieval period. What is medieval period rife with? Ignorance, fear, and superstition. So yes, death was a grim specter walking around with a scythe in a deep, the first hoodies. I rather imagine that getting into that would offend way too many religious philosophies. Trivializing death by reducing it to a mere character in a game of pretend. Gary, I thought, did a pretty even-handed approach given his religious background and beliefs. But just as there are aspects of D&D where I get skittish around, and no, I'm not going to elucidate them, so don't bother making, ooh, what makes you skittish? No comments. There are things that I don't like to go into great detail in a campaign. I rather suspect that was something that Gary said, no, that just might cross the line. I'm guessing. I'm making a supposition based on the information that I have and the knowledge I have of the way Gary's head and mind worked. All right, let's see. Onward. Okay. All right, I had a couple of very frank and honest responses in regard to what we were talking about last time. This is one of them. I'm trans and I own Stygian Fox Publishing, which mainly produces content for Call of Cthulhu. Ernie is an idiot because we're not woke or militant because we've been accepted. Gamers don't even register trans or gay or disabled or POC. I'm not sure what that means because we're just gamers. Well, yeah, I mean, Jesus, I have never. You sit down at my table. I don't want to look up your skirt or down your trousers. You're player number 4 in that seat playing character Willie. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Don't care. I don't ask, so you don't have to tell. It's none of my business. You do your thing, I'll do mine. And we'll all get along great. We've moved on from the woke era. Ernie has been stuck in the bubble. Personally, I'd like to see TSR come back, but as an honest and clear singular entity. Thanks for clearing up the issue, and as ever, your support and acceptance of the wonderful variants of gamers. Oh, and then this person made a comment. Apparently, it's some aside I threw away. And I don't quite understand it. I'm not sure if it's a typo or if it's an aphorism that I simply don't understand. Oh, and yeah, a product with your name on it would sell like shit of a shovel. Now, even if that's supposed to be shit off a shovel, anyway, I'm guessing that's a generally favorable, encouraging comment. Thank you. TSR pioneered much of what people take for granted today. With that being said, where did the idea of healing potions come from? Perhaps an old fairy tale, or did another game beat you to it? And somebody responded, well, there's Lucy's healing cordial in the Narnia series. But I'm sure that the idea predates that. And then somebody else responded that medicine men, or wise women, hedge wizards, okay. What we call drugs were once equated with magic. This permeates folklore and folk healing. For example, it's interesting to note that the root meaning of the word occult is that which is hidden, roughly translated, the moon occulted Mars. There's a connection there with the hidden reasons for medicinal plants having good effects used by patient peoples, and with the notion of magic healing potions. Yeah, I'm sure that Gary and Dave had similar incidents of reading stuff. You could, I mean, how far? Yeah, Alice in Wonderland. Drink me, eat me. Where do you need to go for that? Maybe Gary had his tongue way into his cheek after watching too many Bayer aspirin commercials and came up with a healing potion. Because this does predate Red Bull and energy drinks. though I often use that as an example or a metaphor. This predates it. So, but yeah, the fact that I can go out in the woods and pick 3 herbs and brew them into a tea and make the tightness in your chest go away would be looked upon as magic by people that didn't understand herb lore. All right, thank you. This is the last. This is going to wrap it up. I'm the trans person that Ernie and the crew have been fighting. I'm assuming that this is the individual that was replied to with "You are disgusting." I greatly respect what you've done for the hobby that I and others hold so dearly. Thank you for stating where you stand. It's very good to see people who are well known in these spaces call out. Well, yeah, okay, you're welcome. I just don't believe there's any room. Again, I don't know the individual who had the giant land hashtag or identifier that made these horrible statements. I do know that they're a jerk and an asshole simply for doing it. But, I'm not calling a certain person a jerk and an asshole. Anyway, we don't need that. We're trying to get back to normal. We don't need to be any more divisive. We've always been very inclusive in gaming. I've seen occasions where people have made the point that we were inclusive from the beginning because we were all oddballs and nerds that found our way together, accepting of all our oddities and nerdinesses, and so we've always been very inclusive. We tried back in the days to get more people of color, to get more females to play. We had very little to offer as ways of example. Hey, be like this person, be like that person. It was hard to, when you had no great female example. This is pre Buffy and pre everything. In that regard, except, very exotic or very little-known tales that had female protagonists. Even some of the most famous, like Scheherazade, she wasn't doing anything heroic. She was crafty and clever and kept drawing everything out and putting off the inevitable by telling 1,001 tales. Kind of heroic, kind of difficult to make that into a heroic effort that people would want to imitate. All right, we're done there. We're done here. Let's get back to regular gaming questions, shall we? For instance, who else has Black Seas? Who else finds that game interesting? I have 9 ships painted, 2 sloops almost painted, and some third rates that I've got to start painting here soon, and one of which I have, and the other 3 I'm waiting to get from England if that ever happens. But I think it's a pretty neat game system, and remember, I'm not just about D&D. That's the cross I bear, because long before I played D&D, I was a wargamer. I started as a board gamer and went into minis, and only then did I get into role-playing. So I'm still very oriented that direction. Good news for all of you in the Midwest planning to go to Game Hole. I'm going. I got the official invite this week. Been invited as a guest. So I'm going to be driving up there in October. And I'm going to Game Hole. I'm going to be running some Wheels of Blame and maybe sitting on a seminar or panel or 2 or a Q&A. I don't know. I'm going to talk to Alex and see what he'd like. But I'm definitely going. And that's in late October. Last 2 years ago when we went, it flopped over into Halloween, so that was fun. And in February, in the greater Boston area, March in Lake Geneva, and probably June in Texas again as we get back to normal. So I hope to be able to see all my friends. I read a comment, and I'll close on this note. I read a comment that saddened me. It was from an individual who was actually defending me a little bit in the controversy about why I said this and why I said that and whatever. And they said that they had met me and even played one of my games, and they were unhappy. They were sad that I apparently had judged them a person not worthy of getting to know better. And I'm really upset that anybody would come away with that. In my defense, every con I go to, even Gary Con, where I've been to every single one, every con I go to, I meet new people. And people I already know are there and whatever. And it's exceedingly difficult to find the time to strike up new friendships. They either happen spontaneously or they don't. I am certain that there are hundreds of fascinating gamers that I've never taken the time to or had the opportunity to get to know better. And it's not a judgment on you. It's a judgment on me. And it's a recognition of the limited time that I have. When I'm at a con, if it's a 4-day con, I'm running at least 4 games. And some cons I run 6. And that's, to me, that's very tiring mentally. So when I just got done running a game that went 4 hours, I'm kind of a wrung out sponge, a little drained in that, and so I probably don't respond real well to meeting new people. But never think that I somehow don't find you interesting enough to get to know better. I'd like to know every gamer there is, but hell, I can't remember the names and the faces and the way they go together are the ones I know now. Oh, so, but it did kind of bother me. Don't take it as a judgment on you. Judge me by it. I either didn't make the time, didn't have the time, or whatever. But I'll be honest, I've met very, very few gamers and gotten, of the ones I've gotten to know, very, very few boring ones. The fact that we're all gamers gives us a little cachet right off the beginning that we're not your average cookie cutter persons and mindsets. We're a little out there. And on that note, I'll leave you out there and say, Dodada Gobi.
Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, a curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when the rates went down. Called in Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite a feller. Curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.